Hey everybody, Reed Price here. I play the role of Rob Shandon on Sullivan's Crossing. And you're listening to Corman Productions' Deep Dive TV Podcast with Dave and Stacie.
Welcome back everyone, this is Dave from Corman Productions, my co-host Stacie here talking about Sullivan's Crossing, Season 2, Episode 10, titled It's a Wonderful Life, the season finale of Season 2. And for most of this episode, it is quite the wonderful life. Stacie is currently wearing her Saw slippers, so that's pretty cool for the season. And I am wearing my Corman Productions Deep Dive TV Podcast sweater that I just got, that you can buy now for your Corman Productions fan. All right.
From our Zazzle store.
Yes, from the Zazzle store. All right, the episode's description reads as follows. Maggie, Cal, Frank, and Edna work together to keep this crossing from falling into the wrong hands, and in the process, Maggie starts to realize just how important the crossing really is to her. Sully decides to take on a partner. Maggie works up the courage to confess her feelings to Cal, and a careless mistake may cost someone their life. The episode was written by Roma Roth and directed by Shamim Shahif. Before we go any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corman Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right, shout-outs this week.
Okay.
One for us. We officially hit 2,000 subscribers. This is actually a shout-out for the fans as well,
Yay.
Because we literally could not have done it without you.
It's amazing.
Yes, indeed.
It's been a heck of a year.
Indeed. Shout out to my daughter. Today is her 12th birthday. I'm a year away from having a teenager and a year and a half away from having a high schooler. So if you don't mind, I'm going to find somewhere to cry.
Happy birthday, Julia. And do you know what celebrity shares your daughter's birthday?
Who's that?
Dick Van Dyke.
Oh, really?
Today is his 99th birthday.
He's still alive?
He is.
Wow.
As of last I checked.
Well,
an hour ago.
Somebody needs to protect this guy so he doesn't end up like Betty White and die before he reaches 100.
Yeah, we're right there. I was thinking of that. It's like we got one more year to go. We just got to cross that line.
Right.
He is probably the most spry and with it 99-year-old I've ever seen. So.
I'm definitely not going to be that spry or with it when I'm 99. Come to think of it, I'm not going to be alive when I'm 99.
I mean, the chances are that that's correct. You know, it's a hard number to hit.
Yes. All right. Also, shout out for Sharon Greenman. She said, I won't say I told you so about Lola, but I will about Glenn. Arrogant, lying sleaze. At least Andrew is honest for better or worse, mostly for the worse. Looks like Cal is rethinking the father thing. We don't get any kind of like, we don't get any ideas on where he stands with that. Just where Maggie and Cal's relationship are at the end of this episode.
Right.
So even that is kind of in question given what happens.
And you know what? I didn't think of it from that standpoint. But that's a really good point, is she's all like, yeah, I'm ready to do this. And no consideration of the fact that he told you he doesn't want to be a dad. So you're kind of like, hey, do you want to be a father figure to my baby? Because I'm ready to be with you, without ever having that discussion. They never talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of have, because we kind of know what Cal's hang-up actually was.
We know.
Yes.
But she's never actually had that conversation with him that we've seen.
It's been kind of hinted at that that's how he feels. But yeah, I mean, that's a conversation that we still need to have. Also, Skylar says that I saw the scene with Jackson in the Canadian version, FYI. That, of course, is being the Jackson scene that was supposed to happen in the last episode.
Yeah.
That got cut by the CW. And also the turn with Lola was intense. She is bitter to her accepting everything and Maggie all of a sudden. And yeah, I'm not sure that I totally buy the speed with which all that happened within the single episode.
Yeah, especially since in this episode, we were just like not bringing it up at all.
It doesn't come up at all.
We're besties again. Everything's cool.
Everything is done with that. Okay, fine. I guess we're done with that.
I mean,
Sure.
I'm very certain we're not done. We're done with that. But I'm very certain we're going to go back to her thing next season, and I'm very sure about something, and I'll get to it when we talk later.
So we're going to spend the entire season with them hitting each other before they patch up in episode 9 and are cool in the final episode. Yeah. We're just going to basically repeat that pattern.
Well, I have theories.
Okay, we'll get there.
I have season 3 theories.
All right, so...
speaking of season 3,
yes.
Prior to the finale airing on the CW announced that they have picked up season 3 of Sullivan's Crossing. Now, obviously, we knew season 3 was being made for CTV in Canada, but this was the CW officially saying they will be airing it to us in the U.S.
So we'll still be able to cover it.
So I have the press release from the CW. I'm going to go ahead and read that.
Sure.
And there's a very important tidbit in this press release. I'll see if you pick up on it. So it says, Season 3 pickup, press release. The CW network picks up Season 3 of hit drama series Sullivan's Crossing. Morgan Cohan, Chad Michael Murray, and Scott Patterson return for a 10-episode third season in 2025. The CW to partner with Real World Management, Bell Media's CTV, and Fremantle for Season 3 of hit drama. The CW network today announced that it has picked up the 10-episode third season of the hit series Sullivan's Crossing, based on the New York best-selling book series by Robin Carr, and adapted for television by showrunner and executive producer Roma Roth. Season 3 of the acclaimed drama starring Morgan Cohan, Chad Michael Murray, and Scott Patterson is currently in production and is set to debut in CW in 2025. We're so excited to return to Sullivan's Crossing next year for a third season, said Brad Schwartz, president of the CW network. Roma, this talented cast, and the entire creative team have built an incredible world full of emotionally charged storytelling that has resonated with viewers over the last 2 years. And tonight's season finale includes a can't-miss cliffhanger that will leave fans clamoring for more. Creator, showrunner, and executive producer Roma Roth said, I am beyond thrilled that we get to continue telling this beautiful story about love and family with this extraordinary cast. The love and support from both the fans and the CW have been overwhelming, and we can't wait to show them what we have in store next.
Yeah, so I picked up on it. It was basically in the first sentence. Scott Patterson is going to be back for season 3, which, even after watching that clip, I'm like, there's no way they just killed him.
I mean, they could. If he decided he didn't want to be in the show, it could happen, right?
Yeah. I just don't. I didn't believe. Yeah.
Here's the funny thing.
Yeah.
Is immediately after the finale aired.
Yeah.
They gave actually, no, I'm lying. This was the thing that was announced before it. It was on social media, and it was CW, but it was like, hey, we're gonna be back, and it was Morgan Cohan and Chad Michael Murray announcing it. Just the two of them. Okay. He wasn't in it. The two of the 3 main cast members did the announcement. They very intentionally left Scott off of it. So after you watch the episode, you can be like, oh my goodness, is he not going to be there because he wasn't part of that announcement? But then they ruined that by, in their official press release, this came from the CW press site. This is hot off the press from the CW giving us this statement. They included his name.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. I
mean, now he could still die. He could still be a main character and be in the hospital for 3 episodes and then die. I mean, it's possible.
So, first of all, that's kind of too dark for this show. Secondly, this is the show that spent 9 episodes trying to convince us that Sully hit Lola, and then was just like, nope,
never mind.
So, I'm sorry, next season it's going to start with Scott Patterson coming out from the back and being like, oh, why are you guys crying? I just went out the back. I'm good. Right. So I don't buy this for a second. And I would be really pissed if they actually did do this, because he's pretty much the best actor on the show. And he's one of the anchors of the show. Right. So the relationship between Maggie and her father is the biggest thing.
There was some foreshadowing, though, that, it could have happened with him talking about inheriting this crossing from his dad when his dad died, and he didn't realize he wanted the legacy until his dad died. And now we're dealing with Maggie talking about taking on the legacy. So, I mean, I see the setup there, and I see that they really didn't want people to know. Right. But then they go ahead and make an announcement like this, which sounds pretty clearly like he's part of it.
Yeah, that sounds like it. All right, so your thoughts on the season finale.
Okay, so I enjoyed the episode. A lot of stuff happens. We finally deal with the whole, the crossing is going bankrupt deal. and we have the auction that we've been waiting for forever. I really wish we had gotten more of this fundraising that I've been waiting for since season 1, episode 1. I've been talking about a fundraiser, and then we literally do it like off camera between episodes 9 and 10. We raised money. So I didn't like that. Then the scene that the CW cut this week was about the fundraising. So that pissed me off. And then I knew going into this episode we were going to have a fire. We had seen the press photos already. There's like 40 press photos about the fire. I was really confused that we saved it for the last 2 minutes of the episode. Like, the episode's almost over, and I'm like, is this an extended episode? Because we haven't had a fire yet.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, there it is. Last scene. Like, it was so short.
Yeah, we also got spoiled with that from...
we did get spoiled from...
Howie Back's Diner people who sent us a video clip. Per our request.
I wasn't going to shout that out and make them feel bad. They're probably not listening to us.
No, they're probably not.
We got an unintentional spoiler.
Yeah. They thought that we were probably from the production and not from... And
there was
Canada to boot,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, most of the world already knows this stuff for months now.
Yeah.
We're just, a little behind here in the States.
Yep.
Just a little bit.
Speaking of which, we did not get any kind of reaction from Rob about the fire. We didn't even see him in that last scene. That scene's kind of...
What do you mean? He
Rob?
was there.
Oh, he was?
He was there with his son, apologizing for not being with him.
Oh.
You missed it.
I guess I did. I guess it was a... Wow. Okay, never mind.
Again, a lot happened in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's literally in our thumbnail, standing with his son at the fire.
So, oh, okay. Never mind.
You'll have to take a peek at that.
Disregard that. I'll watch the scene again.
And... you and I had talked about this, obviously, off mic before watching this episode because we knew about the fire. And I was like, I need to look at the pictures. Usually I don't look at the pictures until after I watch the episode because I've had all the pictures for the entire season because, they're coming from CW. Or, I'm sorry, they're coming from CTV. So I've had them, right?
Yeah.
For months now. But I didn't look at them. And I was like, I don't want to spoil myself, right? For episodes I haven't seen. So I usually don't even look at the episode pictures until after I've watched the episode, the night it premieres. And then I'll do the pictures and then I'll watch it again to take notes. So, but this time I was like, I knew the fire was coming. I was a little worried, worried about Reed because that would be really sad for us if he was cut out of the show.
He's the reason we're covering it in the first place, so.
So I immediately went, once I learned about the fire, and I was like, I gotta look at the pictures. So I looked at the pictures, and I remember, saying, okay, everybody's safe, because there's a picture of everybody outside after the fire.
Yeah.
And I was accounting for everybody who should be in the building. Rob and Sydney and Finn and Clover. They were all in the pictures.
Yeah.
As well as Maggie and Cal and Rafe and Connie. They were all there. I failed to realize that Sully is somebody we should think might be there.
Right, but at the same time, why would he be?
Right. I mean, it was out of context, right?
Right,
so I wasn't like, oh my gosh, he's not in these pictures of people that got out of the fire.
Right.
And I was like, oh, it's okay. There's going to be a fire, but everybody's safe, right? That was our mindset going in based on the spoilers we had. So yeah, I was a little like, oh, even though I knew about the fire, watching it, I was still like, oh, I didn't see that coming, that somebody was actually going to still be trapped inside.
Right.
When the episode ended.
And, I would say that explosion would indicate that nobody lived, but at the same time, this is this show. He's still going to be alive next
Okay,
season.
so two options. Either, like you said, he got out the back door, because this place obviously has an alley door.
Or, there's a basement that we never saw. That
and the other thing, the other option, which I saw somebody, I think, on Facebook post, the idea was maybe he's, in the walk-in, which, should be protected from the fire.
You would think, but...
to some capacity, at least.
Yep. Yeah, so next season's going to start with him crawling towards the walk-in.
I mean, I've seen him survive worse.
Yeah.
This man survived, 3 Saw movies or something like that?
Yes, you're right, yeah.
So I've seen him crawl out of buildings where he should have died. We have seen that.
Yes. So I'm pretty confident that Scott Patterson is still alive, and I'm pretty sure that Sully is as well. All right, so anything else to say before moving on?
I mean, obviously we have a lot to say about the fire, but again, that's the last 2 minutes of the episode, so we got a lot to talk about before we get there. A lot of cast members in this episode. I was very happy to see most of our main cast made an appearance, including Frank and Edna, who were not in the season 1 finale. At least not in the U.S. they weren't.
Right, yeah. They
Again,
might have been cut.
Yeah, now we have this knowledge that CW just randomly cut shit, so who knows? Everything we said in season 1 might have been really wrong. But they weren't in our episode, season 1 finale, so they were here. But you know who we didn't touch on is our Boston crew.
Yeah, no, not one of them.
I'm a little surprised that we didn't get a Boston phone call in this episode.
Right.
Just because we usually get at least one of those 3 characters.
Right.
If not all 3 of them.
Yep.
And this was the finale. So the fact that we didn't have any Boston contact is a little strange.
A little.
But given the fact that they cut Frank and Edna out of the season 1 finale completely, like, I'm not surprised.
There might also be another deleted scene that we don't know about that includes...
There could have been a phone call. I mean, it could have been.
Yeah.
The deleted scene that we do have this week, I'll go ahead and talk about that now, because it would have been right at the very beginning of the episode. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at the press photos yet.
Nope.
Okay, so you didn't see what the deleted scene was.
No.
So according to the press photos that I again got from CTV, there was a scene which would have fit right at the very beginning, after the opening credits, and that is Maggie picking up the donations from the diner.
Okay.
And as well as Finn giving her the change jar from his school.
I'll have something to say about that in a bit.
And, I would have loved to see this scene. I bet it was a really nice little scene for Finn. Like, we don't get a whole lot from this kid, right? And there's a picture of him literally handing it to her, so he was involved in the scene. And I don't know, I feel like it was a great scene. And, of course, Rob was there. I'm guessing they discussed the party. Like, hey, if you win, we're having a celebration party, and if you don't win, come here to commiserate with us.
You can have a commiseration party.
Yeah, I'm sure they, because later we're like, oh, we're all on our way to the party. Like, oh, we're having a party?
Yeah.
And I bet it was discussed in the scene while we're at the diner. And also visible in these pictures is a sign saying that 50% of all orders at the diner is going to the crossing. So that's how the crossing was raising money. It wasn't just a tip jar. It was literally 50% of all the orders. And I'm assuming during that week since we found out, like, hey, we got to raise money. Even though they've known for months they got to raise money. But in this week that we're actually doing it, which, 50% of the orders is actually a lot more than 50% of Rob's profits.
Yes.
So in other words, he wasn't making any money this week that they ran the fundraiser.
Yeah,
he was giving all his profits to the crossing.
We've gotten the idea that the crossing is kind of responsible for the economy of this place.
Right.
So, in a sense, the survival of the crossing is in Rob's best interest.
Of course it is.
So, him making no profits makes sense for him.
Yeah.
I think, if you think of it in a more long-term sense, though.
Right. But yeah, I wish they wouldn't have cut that scene. It feels weird for me that we cut it. It feels weird for me that we keep cutting all these scenes. Like, stop cutting scenes. Just, figure it out.
Yeah.
Cut a commercial. It's okay.
Yeah. make less money. Make less in advertising. Because that's totally a capitalist thing to do. But yeah, it's really, I'll talk about this later, but it's really hard to evaluate this series sometimes, especially with the side characters when their stories are getting cut like that.
Right.
And we
exactly.
didn't know that until
very recently, the last 3 episodes or so.
But
it makes me want to go back and look at all the pictures and analyze them,
and see what we might have gotten.
I'm sure these clues were always there. We just weren't looking hard enough.
Right. Yeah. All right. Anything else to say?
And we have a bunch of guest cast this week on top of our regular cast. We have returning. We have Sedona, played by Megan Ori. Glenn Perry by Dean Armstrong. Clover is back. Jansen Blake plays her. Alyssa, Connie's love interest, is back in this episode, she's played by Michelle Nolden. And George is back, played by Lewis Hodgson.
Yes.
In addition, we have a whole list of one-off actors, which I'll talk about when we meet them, including a couple familiar faces from From.
Yes.
So I'm excited to talk about those actors. And again, I'll wait till we get there.
All right, so diving in?
Let's dive in.
All right. The episode begins with Sully and Frank walking. Sully is guilty for accepting donations to save the crossing. He laments having trusted Glenn, letting him run the clock out on them. and worries where Frank and Edna are going to go. And Frank, of course, is basically like, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah. And what they're doing is they're going like to different cabins or houses or wherever they're doing, and they're collecting donations that people are giving them for this fundraiser. And I mean, as far as letting the clock run out, yeah, Sully, you did do that. Because we could have been raising this money for quite a while.
Hey, you know what was also a bad decision for you? Not just the Glenn thing, just being a bad businessman in general and letting it get to this point in the first place.
Giving away all your cabins for free.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Letting everybody pass without paying for anything ever.
Right.
Giving Lola all your money.
Yes.
I mean, I understand why he did that, but if you don't have it to share, you can't share it.
And now he had actually no reason to give that money to Lola because he didn't in fact hit her.
I mean, he cares about her, and it's great that he wants to help pay for her education. But again, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money.
Right.
And he didn't have the money.
Yes. All right, so credits. And after that, Maggie joins Cal with some money from Ben.
After returning from the deleted scene.
It amuses me to no end that this is actually an important plot point.
I love that part of this episode.
Yeah. So he's basically raised money from the school. Basically, it's a bunch of coins.
It's a big jar of change, as well as she also has an envelope of actual cash from the diner.
Cal calls Finn a sweet kid, and like I said, this is an important plot point. Maggie asks about Sedona, and she's expected to get news today. Maggie's worried about Sully. The crossing is his life, which is why Cal wants to go with him to the auction. Maggie joins Lola, Edna, Frank, and Sully. They're discussing the situation. Sully is basically very morose about his chances. He keeps being really a Debbie Downer in this scene.
I can't blame him.
Yeah.
He's going through it.
He is. Edna says that thanks to Lola's crowdfunding site, they raised a nice chunk of change, but not as much as they would have liked.
Only half as much as they had hoped for. Again, if you had spent more than a week doing this, I'm sure you could have raised a whole lot more.
Right.
In addition to this, Cal had said that he had just dropped off donations from the fire hall, which means Connie and Rafe were also collecting money for them. And like you said, like the whole town's economy, right? Like most everybody, except for Glenn and John McNeil, and a couple random people who end up staying for the auction, are all rooting for Sully.
Yes.
Like the town doesn't want him to lose the crossing. And I imagine there were fundraiser signs all over the town, right?
Yep.
And everybody was doing their part because they did a pretty good job in 1 week.
They did.
It takes time to raise money.
Yep.
And the town came together and they did a great job. It's half of what they hoped for, and we're not getting any figures at this point, but we'll find out later. They earned a nice chunk of change.
More money than I could definitely raise. Maggie tries to get Sully to be positive, saying maybe it's enough, but Sully thinks they are doomed. Connie at the fire station is visited by Alyssa. She tells her that the job that she applied for is hers if she wants it. She says she likes Alyssa, but needs to figure herself out and be herself for a while. And Alyssa understands, and they end up kissing, and she ends up leaving. So, despite what I may have said in prior episodes, particularly the hurricane episode, I think they did a pretty nice job with this little side story.
Yeah, and there's probably a couple scenes we didn't see.
Yes, so that would add
to...
even more reason to say that this was done well.
Yeah, I like Alyssa. I hope they figure it out. And she gets to stick around a little bit.
Yeah.
Unlike, we had this whole love interest with Jackson first season, and now we didn't even get any Jackson in season 2.
I mean, we saw him once.
He was in one episode, and then he was in another episode that they cut the scene out of.
Yeah.
And the explanation isn't just that he went to school, because they just said he's getting ready to go to school. So where's he been? That makes me sad.
Yeah. So at Sully's, they do a blessing ceremony.
A smudging.
Yes, a smudging ceremony. And after Edna says she wants a phone call after the auction happens, Lola gets a phone call from Mrs. Bailey who wants to donate. Sully and Lola agree to go there while Callie and Maggie head to the auction. Lola and Sully show up to Mrs. Bailey's, who doesn't quite recognize Lola as she's grown up. Mrs. Bailey holds them up for some pictures of the crossing when time is of the essence.
And she talks about her husband, Bert, who died 6 years ago. And she said he would have been devastated to hear what's happening. When he lost his job, Sully was there to help him. So now, of course, she wants to help too, which is why she called to make the donation. And Mrs. Bailey, her first name is Mary, according to these scenes. She is played by Jane Eastwood, who's a very prolific actor. I don't know if that's the right word. I didn't write the
Sounds
number
about
down,
right.
but I want to say it was above 300 credits she has.
That is pretty prolific.
Yeah. Including My Big Fat Greek Wedding and all of its sequels. She was in 23 episodes of Haven. She was in the movie Dawn of the Dead and like a serious lot of Christmas movies. Like lots and lots and lots of Christmas movies.
Well, it's quite possible we'll be talking about her again.
I'm very certain, but that's not at this point in my notes because we're going to be revisiting this scene a while, so I'll have things to say as soon as we get back to her.
All right, so Cal and Maggie arrive at the auction. She's surprised so many people showed up to bid against them. Now, I'm kind of curious. Were these people here in support to start with, or did Maggie win them over?
I'm very certain they were all here to bid because they have big envelopes of cash with them.
Gotcha.
She registers for the auction with the sheriff.
Yes.
Who tells her that he's so sorry he has to do this. It's his least favorite part of the job. He loves the crossing. The sheriff's played by Andrew Bigelow. He was in one episode of In the Dark and an episode of Murdoch Mysteries.
Ah, okay. So, Maggie ends up meeting Glenn, and at first he's all friendly, but then she realizes who he actually is.
Right.
And she says, oh, you should be ashamed of yourself. And she says, well, and he says, oh, well, Sully should just go home and stay home and just let me take over.
Yeah.
Basically he's turned from, like a mildly okay guy to this mustache-twirling
It
villain.
sounds like he really thinks he was being generous by offering Sully to keep 30% of the crossing.
I mean, it's from his perspective, it's better than, having nothing.
Right. He was like, he really should have taken my offer.
Yep.
Yeah, because in his mind, like, he already owns the crossing. He has no doubt that he's going to win this auction. And, he was kind of throwing a bone to Sully by offering to let him keep 30% stake in it.
Yep. So the
auction's going to start in 30 minutes, by the way, and Sully's not there yet. So Maggie's starting to get nervous.
Mrs. Bailey, meanwhile, can't find the envelope of money. She eventually... Oh, yeah, okay, so we'll get back to that. But the auction is close to beginning. Maggie is starting to sweat, so she stands up and starts giving an impassioned speech about what the place means to her. And a bunch of people stand up and give testimonials to Sully and give Maggie some extra money on the way out.
Okay, so let me go over those people since you glossed them all over in one sentence.
Yes.
And I have like a whole page on this.
Okay.
Because this is where all our people are. So, okay. Oh, one important note too is that the sheriff says during this that the winning bidder must submit a 10% cash deposit within 30 minutes of winning the auction. A very important plot point.
Gotcha.
But yeah, she's like, I got to do something. So like you said, she stands up. She gives this little speech about how the crossing, this is just a business transaction for all of you. But for us, it's more than that. And, it's more than land for Sully. And she talks about how it took her leaving and coming back and all of this for her to realize how important it is. And she convinced all these people, a lot of these people, that Sully is this great guy, right? They all know that, but she's reminding them of like, hey, this is Sully we're talking about. You all know Sully. He's the best. You don't want to take his home away from him. So the first stands up. He is credited as Man.
Oh.
Now, here's what's funny about these characters. They have names.
Yeah.
But they're just called Man, Woman 1, and Woman 2. So Man is played by George Green. Now, his actual character name is Mr. Berniers. Again, I don't understand why they all have names in the script, but not in their credits. But he's played by George Green, who is in 44 episodes of Trailer Park Boys, as well as a whole bunch of other Trailer Park Boys projects, as a character named after him. His character's name is George Green.
Cool.
So I'm assuming
he's basically playing himself.
He's very well known as this character
Yeah.
that he is. Yeah, he's himself. But here he's just Man, Mr. Berniers. So he said that when his tractor broke down, Sully stepped up and fixed it for him. Reminded me a lot of Don, her dad, and the tractor.
Yes.
We're getting that same kind of story space. And he just hands Maggie the envelope of cash that he was going to bid with. And next to stand up was woman number 1, whose character name is Mrs. Harrison. She is played by Laura Bleasdale. She was in 3 episodes of Mr. D and a bunch of shorts.
And the most proud credit she ever had was woman number 1.
Woman number 1.
Yes.
Even though in the script her name's Mrs. Harrison. I'd be really upset if I did a role and I had a name in the dialogue and then the credit just said woman number 1. But then we have, and what she said was Sully always drove her mother back and forth to the doctor's appointments, and then she gave Maggie her cash as well. Meanwhile, other people are getting up and leaving without handing their cash over, which is probably more realistic, that they gave up, but they're not literally handing thousands of dollars to these people. Then woman number 2 stands up. Woman number 2's name is Mrs. McDonald, according to the story, but she's played by Jennifer Kidd. And I don't know if you recognized her.
I do.
She was in episode 301 of From.
Yes.
She played the fake boy in white's mother.
Yes.
The woman at the little ice cream shop that was kind of like, Tabitha, get the heck away from my son. That was her.
Yep. Okay.
She also was in 6 episodes of The Mist and an episode of Being Erica.
Cool. Yeah, I knew I recognized her name.
And what Sully did for her was he came to her house and installed a wheelchair ramp for her son when he needed it and never asked for a dime in payment.
Which is why he's in this situation in the first place.
Exactly, because he's so generous.
Yes.
And she's like, it's wrong for us to take his home away, so she gives up her envelope as well. And in response to all this, Glenn is just like, thanks for thinning out the competition for me.
Right.
I appreciate you getting rid of all these people who are going to bid against me.
Yeah, Glenn remains unimpressed.
Now, a couple of things I have about this. First of all, she puts all these 3 envelopes of money that she got into her bag of money without counting it.
Right, so she has no idea how much money she's actually working
in a little bit, when we're told, like, how much can you bid, and she pulls a number out, well, how do you know? You didn't count the 3 giant stacks of money people just gave you.
Right.
That felt really unrealistic to me, because she needs to know how much money she's holding.
Right.
So that was weird that she just kind of tucked it in with the other money and didn't keep it separate, so at least we can assume she's counting it off camera. But as soon as it, like, got mixed in with the other money, it's unbelievable. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And also, I don't know, I just find it really unrealistic that these people just handed over thousands of dollars so easily.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I understand deciding not to bid against him.
Yes.
And maybe like, hey, here's a small donation. But they all just literally handed over their entire envelope of cash that they were going to use for their
Here's
deposits.
my life savings. Take it. Spend it in good health.
Right.
If you don't win, I guess I don't care.
And on another note, like, we had Jennifer Kidd, I told you, and in one of the very next scenes, we're going to get another person who we know from. But in addition to that, I recognize a lot of people in this room, like the people that got up and left. Is
one of them Jamie McGuire?
I don't think so. But there were so many faces that I was like, I recognize these people, these background actors.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how many of them are like residents in From. I feel like that has to be where I recognize them
I'm sure.
from.
Yeah.
Because there's like so many faces that I'm like, I think I know you from somewhere, and I think I know you from somewhere.
Well, that's why they didn't need their money, because they're in Fromville. What do they need money there for?
That's true. That's true. Okay, so we go back to Mrs. Bailey.
Yes. She's looking around in drawers. She still can't find the money. And then she finally figures out where it is. And the amount of money she has is $20,000.
Quite a large donation.
Now, you kind of saw this coming in the sense that, like...
We're spending time on the scene.
So it has to actually mean something. Like, if she just... Oh, here's $1.
Here's $100.
Yeah. So Sully doesn't want to take this money because it's a lot of money. But she insists. Lola and Sully get going... But they can't get a hold of Cal and Maggie to let them know that they have all this money.
Right, which is important, because if Maggie knew this, it would have made a big deal. Now,
but
here's what I have to say about... Sorry, what do you have?
We can keep that conversation up in a bit.
I want to talk just a minute about Mrs. Bailey and what I think's happening here, and where I think this is going in Season 3.
Okay.
So she had handed these photo albums over to Lola, which we never looked at. Because Sully and Lola don't give a crap about photos. They're trying to get to the auction. They just want the cash, right?
Yeah.
Eventually Lola was like, don't mean to be rude, but we gotta go. Like, the auction's happening right now.
Right.
And what Mrs. Bailey said was, oh, I have pictures of all of us at the crossing. And then she handed these photo albums. Now, Lola handed the photo albums back. I'm about 99.9% sure we're going to come back to this. We're going to come visit her. We're going to thank her for the money. Maybe give it back to her because we didn't need as much money as, we thought we did.
Right. We didn't need her money at all when it comes down to it.
And I think they're going to sit down and they're going to look at those photo albums next season.
Okay.
And do you know what they're going to find?
What?
Do you know where I'm going with this?
That Sully actually did run Lola over?
I'm very certain we're going to figure out that her husband's car is that brown car that Lola saw in her memory.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, I'm 99.9% sure that this is foreshadowing of that. Her talking about her dead husband, and I've got pictures of us back in the day at the crossing.
Probably after doing some drinking and then running Lola over?
Yeah. I'm very certain that there's pictures of that car in these photo albums that Lola was holding.
Nice.
Because why else are we talking about, here's some picture albums that we didn't look at?
I think it's just to waste time and to make Sully and Lola sweat, but that's a good theory.
I'm very, very sure, especially because she's not some random actress that has 3 credits. She's a big-name actress. I think we're going to see her multiple times next season.
Okay.
Because otherwise, it's
Why bring her in?
that we brought in an actress that's done so much
of that
without
caliber,
us planning on seeing her again.
All right, so the auction proceeds, and it gets to Maggie's bid of $160,000, but then Glenn says $200,000, which is more money than they have. And by the way, the $20,000 that they have does not equal the $200 and something odd dollars that they now need. Or actually, they only need like $40,000 plus a little bit more, so like $50,000. But that's that math doesn't quite
I don't
add up.
know any of the numbers you just said.
Okay, so her last bid is $160,000.
Okay, so Cal asks her how high can you go?
Yeah.
And she says $200,000 unless Sully arrives with more money.
Okay, so I missed that line.
So she said we can bid $200,000.
Okay.
Now I was confused if this means she's holding $20,000, which is the deposit they need for $200,000, or did they literally raise $200,000?
Right.
Because they don't talk about what are the terms for the other 90%.
Right.
Is it that you got to get a mortgage for that, and no one's going to give Sully a $180,000 mortgage because he already owes the bank money.
So they don't need to pay the entire thing.
They have to pay 10% in 30 minutes.
So Maggie give you like $200,001.
I mean, maybe. Now, another important thing that happened there's a lot of things that happened during the bidding process. One of the things that happened is Glenn looked at George, who's the real estate dude that's his buddy that's with him, and he tells him, and this is when Maggie was at 120, he tells George, go to the office and get my bank card and go to the bank. I need more money for the deposit. Which means he was never planning on this going above $100,000, Glenn. That's where he thought this was going to go.
Right.
So Sully raised a lot more money than Glenn gave him credit for, because he only brought, I'm assuming, about $10K, because once the bidding passed $100,000 is when he sent George to go get more cash. Because remember, if you don't have the 10% in 30 minutes, you don't win.
Right.
Which obviously is a big deal here. So George leaves to go get the bank card and then go to the bank. The other thing is we do have one other person bidding.
Yeah, John McNeil.
John McNeil. So
yes.
We have to talk about him. John McNeil is the mechanic creature on From.
Yes.
Who is incorrectly listed as having this role in episode 301.
Yeah.
Of Bidder Number 1 is his title. Obviously, that doesn't happen in episode 301. It happens here. This is where that credit belongs, in 310. And I made sure John made it into our thumbnail as well. He is sitting in the background, just off of Cal's left shoulder. You can see him. He's a little blurry, because obviously he's not the focus of the picture, but that's John McNeil. And if you are watching this and you watch From, I'm sure now that we've pointed it out, you'll recognize him. He's the mechanic creature. He seems to be doing all right for himself. He bid $50,000. He was the very first bid, which is why his credit's Bidder Number 1. And he came back in at $68,000. And then when Maggie jumped above that, he got up and left. And in the meantime, everyone else in the room leaves as well. There were still like maybe 3 other pairs of people that didn't have any lines, that hadn't left yet. They all left during the bidding war. So by the time we get to $200,000, it's just Glenn, Maggie, and Cal are the only people left in the room besides the sheriff and his board of people.
Maggie cannot match this. It seems that Glenn has won. Sully gets there too late,
He gets there just as the hammer is being dropped, announcing that the auction goes to Glenn for $200,000, because Maggie had said, I can only bid up to 2. When Glenn said 2, she was like, I can't bid anymore. Now, I am confused about that $20K that Sully's bringing. Would that have brought their maximum bid to $220,000? Or would it have doubled it to $400,000 because they only need 10%?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know.
And what was the plan for the other 90%? You know what I mean? That's where I'm a little confused. But it doesn't matter, because Sully didn't get there in time, and it goes away for $200,000. And Sully's in the door like, no way! And then he drops the hammer. Now listen, that sheriff hadn't dropped the hammer yet. He absolutely could have waited for what Sully had to say.
Yeah.
Sully came in a second before the hammer drops. He was like going once, going twice, and then Sully's like, wait. Wait means wait.
Yes.
I don't know. The timing was weird.
Okay.
The timing of this whole thing is weird. Every time someone walks through that door, it's like there's a magical portal that brings people through the door at just the wrong moment. Like exactly one moment out too late each time. But anyways, yeah, so it goes to get Glenn, and Maggie apologizes. She's so upset, telling her dad, I'm sorry. And this is where Glenn tells the sheriff to wait, because George is coming back from the bank with the money. And the sheriff's like, well, you only got 30 minutes.
Right. And this gives Maggie an idea. She calls Frank, who is more than happy to go along with Maggie's plan.
So she calls, and we see his side of the call. He picks up the phone. She only has time to speak for a sentence or two, and he says, got it. That's all he says. Hangs up the phone and tells Edna, we gotta go to the bank. And he picks up that jar of change from Finn. And I instantly knew exactly where we were going with this.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Yes, me too.
Because doesn't this fit Frank perfect?
It does.
Like Frank's shenanigans, remember when he snuck Sully out of the hospital?
Yep.
And brought him fishing. Like this whole, like everything that Frank does, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is perfect. It's like, it was just such a beautiful idea. And the fact that he instantly like knows what has to happen and pulls it off, I loved it. It was my favorite part of the episode.
So Sully commiserates with Cal about not understanding the idea of building a legacy until after his father was gone and Maggie was born. Meanwhile, Frank and Edna at the bank get there before George.
Thankfully.
With Ben's coins.
Thankfully, they got there before him, and thankfully there's only one teller at this little bank.
Yes. So they go to the teller and whisper something in her ear, and she says, anything for Sully. And then they dump the coins to count individually, while Edna smiles and Frank looks back at George and looks really, really amused.
Yeah. The bank teller is played by Alexis Milligan. She's in one episode of Haven, an episode of Mr. D. And the way that she was like, anything for Sully. You know what would have made this scene even better is if there was like a tip jar or a sign saying they're collecting money for the crossing.
Yes. Yeah.
That wasn't in the scene, but that would have made it better to like really show us like the support this town has for Sully. But yeah, they dumped the coins. Now, when I was like, I knew exactly what was going to happen, I envisioned the coins ending up all over the floor.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen, but it's the same difference, right?
Yep.
Is we're going to hold up this teller and we're not going to let you get your money out of the bank.
And pretty good idea for Frank and Maggie for sure. So time runs out for Perry, and the winner ends up going to the second highest bidder at $160,000.
Which also means they got a really nice discount.
They did.
Now, here's the thing about a foreclosure. Sully's still going to owe the money he owed before the foreclosure.
Okay.
So he's not really like getting a deal. Like either way, he's the one paying it.
So I'm kind of curious. Does that $160,000 go towards what he owes?
Minus the fees of the cost of putting on this auction.
Okay.
So the sheriff's department's gonna keep whatever like percentage of that their fee is for this whole shenanigans.
Yeah.
Between the lawyer's fees and whatever their costs are, right, that they declare. The difference of that goes towards Sully's mortgage, and he'll still be responsible for the difference.
Okay.
So we don't have a clue how much he owed, but let's say he owed $300,000, right? And let's say they keep $10,000 for fees, so $150,000 goes towards it. He'd still owe the other $150,000. Which
Okay.
I'm sure he doesn't owe that much because he's been, I don't know. Did they say he had 2 mortgages? I think they said he had 2.
Not sure.
already because he was trying to take out a third.
Yes.
So he probably, I don't know what he owes. They never told us.
Well, presumably he has more time now.
Right. Like, that's the thing, is that mortgage is closed. And that's what it comes down to, is how much money did you actually collect? The 10% or the whole thing?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm actually kind of surprised. I guess they kind of had to give us numbers if we're watching an auction.
Yeah.
Usually they avoid numbers altogether, right? And they keep it all very ambiguous.
I'm kind of curious, though. Like, so this means that Sully would be current on his mortgage, right?
It would mean the mortgage is closed and it's a debt that he owes.
Okay.
That would, like, now he's got to deal with, like, monthly payments through, like, a debt collector or whatever. For the original mortgage.
So there is no more mortgage.
Unless now he has a mortgage for this 160. I don't know. If it's 160,000, they're paying right now 16,000. So the other 90% would be whatever that number is.
Yeah, okay, anyway, moving along.
And here's another fun fact, is technically Maggie's the one that won.
Yeah.
So she's the owner of the crossing now. Right?
Yeah.
She's the one who registered. She's the one who bid.
Yeah.
She just won the crossing. I don't know if he legally would have been able to bid anyways, being the person that defaulted on the loan.
Gotcha.
So technically, like, Maggie owns the crossing. But they don't, I don't think they get into that.
No. So Sully, relieved and emotionally, says he guesses they are still in business. Afterwards, Sully goes to Frank and Edna's and messes with them a little bit about making them partners, and he makes them partners.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to take on He makes it sound like bad news, right? He's like, I decided to take on new partners, and they're like, what now? You know,
right, yeah,
like,
yeah.
I thought we dealt with this. And he's like, you might know them, the Crane Bears.
Yep.
And of course, they're super excited. So basically, he's just like, I'm giving you
a stake.
I'm giving you some percentage of the crossing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it doesn't mean a whole lot because they're old and don't have any kids, so it's not like they're passing it on to anybody.
Right.
It gets more. I think it's more just a
symbolic gesture.
Exactly. Like, what difference does it make, really? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you. So Rob, Finn, Clover, and Sydney decorate Shannon's for the congratulations party. Rob tells Sydney that he did not invite Jane, as they were taking it more casually, and he thinks that inviting her would basically send the wrong message. Rob says he's not ready for a relationship.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm pretty sure that a party at your public establishment for other people is pretty casual.
Yeah.
The whole town's going to be here, presumably.
It's not like...
You could have invited her.
It's not like he's bringing her to meet the family. You know?
Right. He could have been like, hey, there's a party at, my diner I own tonight if you want to stop by.
Right.
He's being a little silly, I think.
Sydney says that sounds familiar, and Rob doesn't think the situation is the same as rape at all, but we've kind of compared it to it before. And she says not to make the same mistake she did with rape. Rob says he might still have a chance with rape after all. And she ends up leaving. Maggie's in her room when Sully joins her. Maggie tells him that she's decided to stay and not go back to Boston. Sullivan's Crossing is her home. She wants to stay here with him.
And this is where she wants to raise her baby.
Yes. And Sully says he's been waiting forever to hear her say that.
And so have we.
Yes. These last couple of scenes before things go apeshit bad, it's like you're watching these scenes going, wow, it's about effing time.
Right?
But yeah. So Sydney goes to talk to Rafe, who isn't up for talking to her until she tells him that she wasn't honest with him before, but is willing to be so now if he's willing to listen, and he agrees to do so. She goes on to tell her story about her ex-boyfriend, and all is well now between the two of them. And they end up kissing, I think?
Yeah, they hug it out.
Yep.
So, are they together now? I was kind of confused of where they left things.
Yeah, I don't know. But we'll see next season, I guess. Rob is going home to change. Finn wants to stay with Clover to decorate. Maybe he has a little crush on Clover.
So yeah, Finn and Clover came back. They apparently left to go get ready together, which is weird. Why didn't Clover go home to get ready and then Finn and Rob go home to get ready? Yeah. Why is Clover taking the kid to get ready for the party?
Yeah, maybe
so that seemed weird.
Maybe something bad is going on here, and I don't know.
I mean, I get why we needed Rob to be the one to leave, and we wanted to keep Finn there for the scene, but I don't know. It was a little weird, and Rob tells her that the chili is simmering. He's going to go get dressed. And he asks Finn to go with him, even though Finn's already ready. And Finn's like, I'm going to stay with Clover. And Clover's like, we can finish decorating together. Now, throughout this whole episode, Clover's being really good with Finn.
Yeah.
My note is that she may suck at being assistant manager, but she seems to come a long way at being a babysitter.
That's true.
Because in the beginning, she didn't want anything to do with Finn. She didn't want to watch him, and now they're like best buds.
Yep. So, I'm curious. Well, I guess we'll get back to that in a sec, but Maggie enters Cal's cabin. Sedona calls with the results, and the situation is easily corrected with surgery. She does not, in fact, have schizophrenia.
Yeah, that was the short of it.
Yes.
And yay.
Yep.
Yeah, that whole plot line that we like put Megan in the last 2 episodes just to kind of like, I don't know, it felt really kind of weird.
I would say that a lot of the handling of these little stories is weird.
Yeah.
In general with the series, and even the big stories they screw up. Like, so
you're telling too many stories.
Yeah, it's. I'm not watching Sullivan's Crossing at this point for the stories they're telling because they don't always handle those very well. Looking at you, Sully and Lola. But I do enjoy the characters. I do love a lot of the little moments.
Yeah.
The story handling leaves something to be desired, to being honest here. And, since we don't have screeners through the CW and no relationship with them whatsoever, I can safely say that what they do with the editing here, cutting out these scenes, sucks.
Yeah.
But, like I said, it makes it hard to really evaluate the stories that we're being told.
Right.
I mean, the bigger stories, I'm pretty confident that the editing does not explain why those are badly handled. But these littler, smaller stories definitely does.
Yeah.
But yeah. So she goes on to say she's staying at Sullivan's Crossing, and she confesses her feelings for Cal, who tells him that she loved him from the moment he saw her. Okay, I was there.
Right?
I watched that episode. You're not fooling me here, Cal. You did not love her from the moment you saw her.
No, he was very rude to her the first
yeah.
time they met. And she was rude back. They had a really rough first meeting.
Yes.
There was no attraction.
Right. Once we get to the second episode, okay, but not that first episode. But anyway, that's just romantic nonsense that you always kind of say. But so they kiss, and Sully humorously interrupts, and he's clearly happy with what's transpiring.
Yeah, he definitely realizes what he walked in on, and he's like, I'll give you a minute.
And Maggie and Cal laugh. So Clover and Finn sit at the table.
She says the chili smells good. Now, in the last scene when Rob was leaving and was like, the chili's simmering, and I had the hindsight of knowing where this is going. Is it only me? I was getting some This Is Us PTSD at the mention of chili.
Yeah, and you were right to do so. And I'm going to ask, whose fault is this?
That is a great question. That's my next note.
Because you were going to blame this on Clover.
I was sure it was something Clover did,
yeah.
and it wasn't something Clover did. But is it her fault for not checking on the chili? Is it Rob's fault for leaving it cooking, perhaps at too high of a temperature?
Right.
Like, so Finn walks into the back to get decorations, and we see the pot boiling over and the fire start. I don't know. Who's at fault?
Yes.
It's a great question.
It's not as clear cut as this is Clover's fault.
Right. Definitely not.
Mm.
It's not a clear cut answer. It was an accident, obviously.
Yeah.
But he told her it's cooking, so maybe she should have been checking on it, as she's the assistant manager of a restaurant.
Yes.
But also he knows Clover sucks. So why would you leave food cooking and leave the restaurant,
right,
knowing she's the only grown up here?
Yeah.
But also, how did it boil over and start a fire when it was just simmering?
Right.
So maybe
it's not anybody's fault. Maybe it's a freak accident.
I mean, something happened.
Yep.
Something happened, and it was bad.
Maybe he got the pot from the same people that Jack got his crock pot from.
Exactly. And
yeah.
I hope the insurance covers this fire.
Yeah.
And doesn't find them at fault for it.
Right. Yeah. So Rafe calls in the fire. Maggie, Cal, and Sully all end up at the scene. Cal, Sully, and Rafe end up heading back into the fire because to get Finn.
So Cal and Sully go in to get Finn.
Right.
Then Rafe shows up with the fire truck. They tell him that Cal and Sully went in, and that's when Rafe goes in after all of them.
Maggie calls Rob to let him know what's going on. Cal ends up getting Finn out. Sully's still in there. Maggie tends to Cal's injuries, and he seems to be having some breathing problems at the same time. And I was kind of worried for Cal there for a moment.
It was more, this is us PTSD, listening to him having like these smoke coughs.
I was reasonably convinced they were not going to kill Chad Michael Murray off.
Right.
I mean, the character that he plays, not the actor. But, I mean, he's one of your biggest stars in the series.
Yeah.
Being real
But
here.
it was that, like, we've seen this.
Yep.
Just because you're out of the fire doesn't mean you're safe.
Right.
And Maggie, meanwhile, she's like... She sends Clover over to the paramedics because Clover's freaking out, right? She's fine, like, physically, but she's, like, having a panic attack because of the fire. And she left Finn in there, so maybe she's not the best babysitter that I just got done saying she was doing a good job of.
Well, I think she might be better than Julie from.
Yeah. Yeah, Julie probably would have been, like, in the next town already by now.
Yeah.
And so I found it funny that Maggie's, like, she's doctoring. It's like she jumps right in. She's examined Finn and gave her diagnosis on how Finn's doing. She's throwing orders around to the paramedics who just listen to her. They obviously like know who she is and know she's a doctor.
Yeah.
Because they're just like taking orders from this woman on the street who's like, do this, give her oxygen, do that.
Right.
It's like, I'm sure they know what to do. Like, they're the paramedics.
Yeah, at the same time, I think that this is foreshadowing about what her role going forward in this series is going to be.
Sure.
Now that we know that for a fact that she's staying here.
She's staying, and she's going to need a job other than, helping run the cash register at the outpost, presumably.
Right. She may even be running things if Sully's actually dead, which I don't believe, but...
Well...
So,
she's going to do everything.
Right.
Duh, because everybody in this town does everything.
Yep. Rafe comes out. He doesn't have Sully, and just then, with Sully still inside, there's an explosion. Maggie cries out. Cal is holding her back, and that is where the episode and season ends.
Yes. And I don't know if you mentioned this, but before she realized that her dad still hasn't come out of the building, like, her and Cal choose the worst moment ever to just, like, start making out. They're, like, sitting on the back of the fire truck, and she patches up his burn, and then they just start kissing.
Yeah.
It's like, hello, fire! 5 feet away.
Yeah.
They just took a break to be like, oh, yeah, we love each other now. Let's kiss. And there's, like, 5 press photos of that, by the way.
Yeah.
Of them kissing on the back of the ambulance.
Yeah.
Okay. Great timing, guys.
I mean, I guess...
And then she's like, oh, wait, where's my dad?
Right. Yeah, that is actually pretty funny. So, yeah. That's the episode.
That's the episode.
So, I don't think we're going to do a Sullivan's Crossing Season 2 wrap-up.
I think we covered it.
But I'm going to ask you, what did you think overall of the season?
I mean, it was definitely had some weird plot lines.
Yeah.
That didn't need to take a season.
We did a lot of running in place. Like,
yeah.
I don't think I would be as mad at the whole Sully and Lola thing if it took place over a couple episodes.
Right.
The entire season
like,
is a bit
it was
much.
our season 1
yeah.
Cliffhanger moment of him realizing he's the one that hit Lola.
If we resolved that in a couple episodes with the same solution, okay, fine. But we spent most of the season on it.
Right.
That's not okay.
Yeah.
In storytelling principles, that sucks. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of running in place, like things that we could have, handled a little quicker.
Absolutely. So what happened this season? We spent like 3 episodes dealing with, we think Sully has Alzheimer's, but he doesn't.
Yes.
And it was just a medical misdiagnosis. We kind of did the same thing again with Sedona.
Yep.
Which is just kind of shoehorned in there. We're dealing with Rob's love interest, which didn't make a whole lot of progress. I feel like Connie's story went a little more full circle.
Yeah.
She progressed. She's doing her character is in a much better place.
Yep.
But if she's taking a new job, does that mean we're not going to see her anymore? Or is it is Otter Lake close enough that she's still going to be a character in this show?
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that, but I don't know that we definitively know that she is taking that job.
It sounded like she's going to take it. Why wouldn't she take it?
I mean, I guess.
She's asking about it.
Right.
And does that mean Cal's going to run the fire department?
Search and
rescue. Like, is he going to actually get a paid position there now that there's a... Because you said that last time, right? That there might be a position opening up.
Yep.
Is Maggie going to take a job at the hospital?
Yeah.
Or is she just going to hang out at the crossing?
Right.
And, be a mother for a little bit?
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to think Sully's dead for 9 episodes.
Probably.
And then he's going to come back.
We're going to be on this sidewalk dealing with this fire for a few weeks.
Right, yeah. Speaking of which, Shandon's
is gone as we know it.
Yeah.
So we know from our behind the scenes sources that the Halle Deli is not a filming location for season 3.
Really?
I mean, that was part of the spoilers that we got.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they acknowledged, like, that they're not part of this anymore.
I mean,
possibly, like, we get something there, dealing with the transition of the fire.
But
we're not rebuilding it.
Right.
We're not rebuilding that location in season 3.
Right.
So what's Rob gonna do now?
Yeah.
Is he gonna open a new location, or does he move on to an entirely new thing? Because the diner was Sarah's thing, and now that it's gone, is he gonna move on?
He should take his bat and become Batman and run around and saying,
maybe he'll focus on his music.
Yeah.
Or maybe he will go into baseball.
Or maybe he'll end up in Frumville. You never know.
I hope not. No, because that's a bad fate.
Yes.
And again, I said this before, but is insurance going to cover this? Like,
yeah.
Where's he at financially because of this? And, hopefully, like, in the interim, before the insurance comes through, is Sully and the Crossing, I hope they're helpful to him. Because they were pretty helpful. He was pretty helpful to them.
He has an extra $20,000 that he doesn't need, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, an extra $60,000.
Ah, yes.
Altogether.
Yep.
Possibly. If we're talking, we were going to spend $200 and now I don't know, I'm confused by the money part. But do we now support Rob? And I feel like we need to.
Yeah.
We being the Crossing. Because they're all one community. Does he just come work at the Crossing now? Like, do we make him a full-time employee at the Crossing? Maybe.
We could also rebuild his diner, but it looks completely different, so they have a different location.
It would be a new location if we're rebuilding it.
Yep.
Or maybe we're going to rebuild it in season 4, and we just weren't there yet in season 3.
Gotcha.
Right? I mean, who knows? But it made me sad because I love the Halle Deli.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to visit there if and when we ever get to Halifax. Feels like a
can.
big when, but...
right, we still can.
Yeah, this restaurant, like the actual Halle Deli that they filmed at, like, it looks like my perfect kind of place. And I know we said that way back in episode 1 when we were introduced to Shandon's, and I was like, I got to figure out where... I did my detectiving, and I found out where they filmed before we ever, like, found out officially. I think I did a pretty great job of that.
Yep.
I knew right after one episode where they filmed that.
Your talents are seriously misapplied. You should be working for some intelligence agency somewhere. Hopefully in the U.S. I can be or something along those lines. But anyway, moving along. Yeah. Season 2. I think I like season 1 a little bit better. I think it's
we had a lot of complaints about season 1 too, and the kind of weird side stories and pacing, and now that we know some of that's editing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really want to watch the whole series in its original Canadian format.
Yeah.
And see if it just feels like it flows better.
Should we do like some crowdfunding and see if we can get a Canadian DVD?
I think the DVDs are out.
Would they work here?
I'm pretty sure U.S. and Canada is the same region for DVD players, right?
Yeah.
Like it's North America is the region.
So we should buy the DVDs and see them in their original form.
I know DVDs exist, but I don't know who put them out.
Right.
Are they the CTV cuts or are they the CW cuts?
Yeah.
Or are both in existence? I'm not sure. That's something to look into.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm curious. But I do know they either have wrapped filming season 3 or they're about to.
Yeah.
Based on the different social media posts I've been seeing the actors post recently.
Now,
so that's exciting.
Last year at this time, we were thinking we might get these seasons concurrently.
Yeah.
concurrently. I think I said that wrong. We have no hope for that now.
No hope, unless something really weird changes at CW. I don't think it's going to.
Yeah.
Pretty confident we're going to still be a full 6 months, if not more, behind when it airs in Canada.
So our Canadian audience will still see this first before we get a chance to. At least I know Skylar Anderson will be back commenting when we come back for season 3. Eventually.
You know, it brought up something I meant to bring up at the top and didn't, and I'm going to circle back around to it right now. That the title of this episode is It's a Wonderful Life, which is a Christmas theme.
Yeah.
Now, that fits for us here in the U.S. because it's December.
It does.
We're less than 2 weeks from Christmas.
Yes.
So it fits that we're having kind of a Christmas-themed title, right? And I noticed during this episode, Mrs. Bailey is wearing a Christmas sweater.
Interesting.
She has like this sweater with cardinals on it, I think it was.
Okay.
And it looks very Christmassy. Sully is wearing a very winter-looking coat.
Yes.
It felt wintry, this episode.
It did.
But it's taking place in early September, because we were just told Finn just started school.
Yeah.
So it's like the beginning of the school year. It's September. And it aired in Canada in the summer. So, like, probably August is when the episode originally aired. I don't have that date.
I'm trying to figure out the connection, the thematic connection between It's a Wonderful Life, the episode, and It's a Wonderful Life, the movie.
Right.
There was the character of George Bailey, so Mrs. Bailey could be a reference.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that sounds like a nod.
There's the fact
and
of going
she's,
up. Yeah.
she's, you know, saving the day.
Yeah, and we're going up against the bank, basically. So, I mean, that's kind of what, well, George Bailey's character, you know, what It's a Wonderful Life, was a banker, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not really totally sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It's about changing. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where they were going with that title, other than the fact that it felt weird that was the title of a summer show taking place in September.
Right.
When it aired in Canada.
Yeah.
And that she's wearing a Christmas sweater in September.
Maybe they kind of knew that this was going to air in the U.S. at that time?
I mean, I don't feel like they care.
Right.
Right? You're catering to your first-run audience, not your second-run audience.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. But you know what is pretty cool to think about is really who saved the crossing is Finn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finn saved the crossing by holding a change fundraiser at his school.
Yeah. I just found it amusing to no end that little blurb at the beginning about Finn getting changed from his school actually turned out to be...
Which is why I'm so upset that's the scene they cut from us, was him handing her the money.
I mean, essentially...
but I did include a picture of that in our thumbnail as well, him holding that money. We didn't get to see it here in the U.S., but it exists. It's part of the canon, okay? He gave her that money, and he saved the day.
Yes. And I'm assuming that's in the press photos, so that will also be scrolling somewhere in this podcast.
Yes, this episode, and you said you haven't looked at the photos yet, there's like 50-something photos.
So, yeah.
Usually there's 20-something. This episode, they gave us 50-something photos, which is crazy.
That is absurd. I mean, it is the season finale,
and
so it
most
makes
of them
sense.
were about the fire, to be honest, which was, again, the last 2 minutes, which is a weird...
choice.
A weird, like... I don't know. It's weird that we have so many photos from those 2 minutes, is I guess what I'm saying.
All right, do we have anything else to say?
I think we said it all. We are done talking about the season, but we'll definitely be back with Sullivan's Crossing Season 3, which has been confirmed. It will be airing on the CW in a year, eventually. There is potential we might come back with some interviews or some other content in the meantime. Stay posted, and we'll let you know if we get anywhere with that.
Yep.
And check out our other content, because we are not going anywhere, even though the show's done.
Yep, we will be pretty much steadily working. We don't actually take breaks.
We don't take breaks. No. We're recording like 4 things a week at this point. So we're here.
Yep. All right, we'd like to hear from you. What'd you think of this podcast? What'd you think of the show? Stacie can be reached at.
I reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, maybe a tea for my throat, because as you can tell, it's a little raw today. And, of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribe to the channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.